step you take.
Hello and welcome to another tutorial video. This is following initial one, the settling tutorial revisited, and this is a more specific civilization based settling tutorial. So it's almost like a part 2 to that video, but I'm going to go through some situations where a move would usually not be required, but because of the civilization I will be showcasing. So the first example I'm showing is that of hills. So for this specific scenario, I'm playing Ethiopia, and I will be moving onto hill tiles to settle. The other examples that I will show at some point during this Ethiopia settling will be near hills. So Gaul, Korea, Inca, and both Greeces kind of need hills around them for different reasons. But Ethiopia is the prime example, as they, in my opinion, need to put every city they found on hills, because it's literally their biggest bonus. So Council of Ministers here is giving science and culture equal to 15% of the faith you generate if the city is on hills. So literally they're ridiculously powerful. You can just turn faith into scientific and cultural progress if you settle on hills. So just very quickly, because I've done a lot of talking without actually moving, this would normally be quite a good spot. You would lose that marsh tile, so there's no need to remove that. You've got some floodplains, would be a decent farm. Got some mountains. This would be a decent place to actually settle a city, or here, as the game is saying. But we're going to move this way. Fortunately, by moving our warrior first, as I have mentioned is important to do in the last video, we've found a river that is next to a hill, which is perfect. So I'm going to want to settle here. But obviously, if I make this move towards here, let's actually just check before we make a terrible mistake. Okay, good. I'll explain why I've done that in a sec. But if I actually want to move here, it will take an extra move. So I'm actually going to move in this direction. And what I've just spotted, as has just been revealed here, is that there was a city-state here. Now, there is a closeness to how far cities can be apart from each other. So I quickly went into Settler View to check that I'm actually allowed to find a city here. Otherwise, it would be a massive waste of time. But luckily, we're just in range, so we'll go to next turn. And we're going to move up here, and we're going to found our city next turn. Oh, also, for that example, your usual second settler and third settler and every other settler will put you straight onto this map view when you click on them. With your first city, it doesn't automatically do that. So we're going to found the city there on the hills, which means that Adidas... called it Adidas. Addis Ababa? Sure, we'll go for that. We'll be giving this incredible bonus of faith into science and culture conversion. So it's very important as Ethiopia that you actually settle on the hills. But like I said, for Gaul, Korea, Inca, and both kinds of Greece, you just want hills around you. You can still settle on flatland, that's absolutely fine, but you want an area with hills. I will also note that for this to work, I actually had to change the world age, because in a standard game, I had 10 attempts, I think, and every single time Ethiopia spawned on a hill. So bearing in mind with this video, a lot of them are going to have spawn biases. So Ethiopia seems to have a very, very heavy spawn bias to be on hills. But yeah, for the very rare occasion where Ethiopia isn't on hills, that's from there to there is a risk that is worth taking because of how desperately Ethiopia needs to settle their cities on hills. And I would always try for every city as Ethiopia to try and get it on hills and only settle on flatland if I absolutely need to for any reason. So this is the second scenario, and I am playing as victorious England, and a lot of her abilities synergize towards the coast. So she has a lot of abilities around colonization and new continents, and that's easiest to find while crossing the sea. But directly you have the Sea Dog and the Royal Navy Dockyard. There are a few civs that absolutely need the coast, I would say, and I would put Phoenica, both England's, Indonesia, Norway, and obviously the Maori, but I'll talk a bit about the Maori in a second. as civs that you either want to be near the coast, if not on the coast itself, and then civs that can have coastal and can benefit from it would be Australia because of the housing, and Brazil, Ottomans, and Japan for their naval units, but they really don't need it. It's just helpful if they can get coast. So if you can find coast in like 1 or 2 moves, maybe it's worth as those. But Phoenicia, England, Indonesia, Norway, and obviously the Maori, they really want coast. So maybe up to 5 to 10 moves if you find coast, but then you're just going to want to settle if you're wasting more time than that. And that goes for all of these scenarios, really. So I'm going to move my warrior first, and I can sort of see this kind of bumps line here. So either I'm going to find a lake, again, like Lake Windermere over there. It's a lovely place. And we're going to move in this direction. And that is fantastic. We've found it already. Now, you always want to check. So like this scenario, if you hover the mouse over here, this will say lake. That top part of the white box says lake. And if I hover here, it says coast. You always want to check that. So I'm going to make the move. Again, this is a brilliant city location. Sometimes you don't want to be on the coast as these civs. It depends on your playstyle. I like to be on the coast, so I'm going to go right here where the game says. So I'm going to move down here. I am moving away from luxury resources, but I want my capital city on the coast, and then I may literally put a second city right where I've started, because okay, that's fine. We're moving towards Wales. I usually wouldn't advise moving away from all these luxury resources, even though they're the same one. We found some ice, that's fine. So there's the city of London. We can explore up towards those Wales, because this is sort of what is within London's reach. It won't reach back up to the cotton. We can have a look at Settler View. So we wouldn't actually be able to put a city exactly where we started, but just one tile up, we could have a second city that could grab that cotton for us. I think it's important, this is my preferred playstyle, that the capital is on the coast, because we can use that to make us as much money as physically possible. The other scenario that I was concerned about is the Maori. So obviously you're really going to want to settle coastally if you're the Maori, because you're literally going to start in the middle of the ocean. That is a very unique start. The Maori often have to do a lot of exploring before they can found their city, so you don't want to be too behind and you don't want to be too picky with them. So that's the end of the coastal one. Again, look for all the normal things like a river. You don't have to be exactly on the coast for these kind of civs, so I would say Phoenicia definitely wants to be on the coast, and England wants to be actually on the coast because they're unique dock. But if you're, say, Norway, I could have settled maybe here or here and built a docks. So I just want access to the coast as other civs, but definitely England and Phoenicia, I would say, actually on the coast is better for them. So this is the third scenario, and this is river settling. Now, you'd usually want to settle rivers for fresh water anyway, but these are civs that need the rivers desperately. I am going to spend a lot less time on this point because I tried with Netherlands, Hungary, Khmer, Egypt and France about 5 to 10 times each and couldn't get a non-river spawn. So this is very, very, very unlikely to happen. But here we are as Rome, and the others that I left off that list would be Rome and Sumeria. Sumeria, I think, also will have that never not spawning on a river example, but Rome, as you can see here, have not spawned on a river. So I'm going to move my warrior. So I am starting on the fresh water. I have a lake here. Rome and the other civs mentioned benefit from actually being by river, though Rome and the Khmer do benefit from river because of their aqueducts, and technically I could put the city of Rome here and aqueduct it to this mountain, or aqueduct it to this lake and be fine. But I won't have aqueducts right now. I'm going to head in this way that I've seen marble, and brilliant, we've got a river, and another luxury, we've got incense. I'm going to move here, found a city-state, let's do what we did before, and we're going to check. Yes, we can still settle, and we can settle here. So we're going to move in between these two luxuries, which is ironic because the next one I'm filming is the Maya, which will be actually really happy to be in a location like this. So we're going to move up this way onto the hill to get an extra sight, and we're going to put the city of Rome here. Now that opens us up to an aqueduct here and an aqueduct here. Usually Aqueducts are not necessary unless you really want to, I don't know, prevent food loss from drought, to get that tiny little extra bit of housing. But as Rome and the Khmer, you always want aqueducts in every city that you can, because Khmer gets ridiculous amounts of food and Rome gets their unique one, the bath, which is like extra amenities. The other examples, you've got the Netherlands, which desperately needs to be near rivers because of adjacency. Hungary get production bonuses. Sumeria and France have a tile improvements that benefits from rivers or has to be on rivers. And Egypt gets a production boost to wonders adjacent to rivers, I think it is. This doesn't need to be too much of a focus of this video, and I'll probably cut this down because it's really not too important, because I couldn't find a scenario until I played as Rome where one of those civilizations wasn't near a river. And I even started with a start that I could have used. I just wanted to make the point that this can happen. So this is the last scenario that I will be covering in this video. The Maya get a category all of their own because they are very, very unique in their playstyle. First, this top ability that I'm not going to pronounce. Their cities near the capital, but not the capital itself, are actually stronger. Then the second ability and kind of the observatory one are the main ones that take focus. So they don't actually get any benefits from fresh water, which will be apparent if I go into the settler view. And you can actually see there are no green locations. So, and obviously the red is where they can't. So then if I have a look at their actual ability, they get extra housing from farms as well as gold, and they get one amenity for every luxury that's near the city centre. That means I'm going to want to found a city right next to a luxury resource. Now, this location isn't the best, to be completely honest, because, again, my housing is entirely going to come from farming. So what I'm actually going to do is what I usually don't do and would usually advise against. I'm actually going to settle here. Even though that will destroy the forest and I'll lose a chop, I have actually millions and plenty, which isn't actually too great for the Mayans. And I can see a farming triangle kind of area that I can make here, which will give me the housing that I need. And also, obviously, if I'm settling here, I'll get the luxury bonus. So I'm going to explore this way, and I'm going to pop my city here. So immediately it's got 2 amenities in it. That's the extra one coming from there. We only have 3 total, so we're going to have to get farms up here, and every farm we get is going to be an extra gold as well as the housing that we need. They also have the observatory, which plays into their kind of settling style, so that plantations are what give them observatory, their unique campus adjacency. Settling a city next to a luxury resource that needs a plantation, so in this case cocoa, if I put an observatory here, it's going to get the +2 from whenever this is a plantation. In a lot of scenarios you'll find Maya seems to have a spawn bias of like 1 resource there and 1 resource here. If I just, sure, we'll go for that. If you imagine another cocoa resource there, and then I would, in this case, I would put the city maybe here. So if you imagine that's a cocoa resource, and there's the cocoa resource there, I would put the city here, and it would get 2 luxuries, 2 amenities from the adjacent luxuries, and then when I put the observatory there, it also gets +2 from there, and +2 from there. So they have quite a synergy with luxuries, and especially that of plantations. But it's a very unique playstyle, and I really want them to make more civs with this kind of playstyle, because it's actually completely different. And now to close off the video with some honourable mentions. Obviously, I've skipped out featured civs. So, for example, Brazil wants to be in the jungle. Nubia and Mali want to be in the desert. Russia and Canada want to be in Tundra. Those sort of things I haven't done a video on because A, they have a massive spawn bias towards it, and 2 is that it's different to the way I've explained it. I don't know if it's the right wording, but I imagine those as terrain types instead of features. So what I've covered is coast, I've covered hills, and I've covered rivers, and obviously the Maya, and they're all kind of features of the land. Whereas when it comes down to grassland, plains, snow, all the terrains themselves, as Russia, let's say, if you started in a grassland tile, you could see the north of the map. You'd want to move north to where there's going to be tundra. You're not going to spawn and think, I'm going to walk until I find a tundra biome, or spawn as Nubia somehow, not in the desert, and walk until you find a whole area of desert, because they come in clumps. It's not random placement. Hills are scattered throughout the map. Coasts are where the land ends across the map, depending on the map type you're playing at. Rivers are also scattered throughout the map, and so is freshwater and luxuries and that kind of thing. The desert and tundra and actual terrain types come in clumps and kind of act as areas or biomes. Anyway, that concludes this video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this has been helpful, and I hope you comment if there's anything I've missed, if there are any scenarios I've missed. And thank you very much for watching this video.